Chris.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
Are we there? Post-Orthodoxy is live now.
It's true. We are. I hope everybody can see me. We have to be further away from each other now, dear.
We do? Because
you have to stay over there and I have
because COVID?
No, because of the chats where hopefully our friends
right.
and loved ones will share their thoughts with us on human rights and ethical government.
Yeah. All right, it's shared to my timeline. I have links to share today during
nice.
the post-interview part of my show.
Maybe you can tip it up a little bit. Haha, every week.
Neat site. Okay.
All right.
Very good.
We're probably going to sneeze here. Ugh.
So we have 4 minutes before I have to call.
We do, and that's why I'm hoping that we'll get some folks logging online. We can talk to them. We're just kind of doing some impromptu videos. After last week's amazing appearance on Evno's show,
yeah,
he asked us to come back and do another one.
Right. We're regular correspondents.
Otherwise, we would just keep doing web design and all kinds of other stuff that does not involve actually talking with you guys, which is why we're doing all the other stuff, because we want to be talking with you guys. So we hope you all will tune in today.
Justin's watching.
Justin Doig.
Yeah.
Is that how you say it? Are you supposed to
Doig.
Doig. Is it 2 syllables or 1 syllable?
We just always called him Pretty Boy.
Oh.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
I just posted a link to our GoFundMe page in the comment section of the live stream.
It's true. We got kicked out of KVMF. We want to keep having these conversations with you, and we want to make them prettier and better so that we can have global guests from all over the world on this video with us, as well as a chat with you guys wherever you're at a given moment that we decide to do a live stream. We've got some really cool topics lined up for season 2. If you have any ideas of things that we should ask questions about that everybody says you're not allowed to ask questions about, please let us know.
Right, we're trying to keep from yelling at you.
We do have to yell a little bit though, because
we don't have microphones.
Yeah.
So we yell a lot now.
Which makes us sound angry and more emphatic than we're trying to sound. We're trying to sound thoughtful and philosophical, and it's hard when we're so far away from you. So we're trying to raise money for some microphones and a light that's not like an light for sewing embroidery with, and fluorescence.
Set design.
Well, we have so much.
Right here, we have it right here.
Helga, yes. Has joined us today for set design. You're getting some text message there, Dark Side.
Oh yeah, I don't know how to turn that off yet.
Is it Evno?
No, it's our friend Erica.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, we're going to call Evno here pretty soon. His topic today is human rights and government, specifically the role of government. Specifically, could government be ethical?
The role of government and human rights, I think, was the general.
Isn't the government supposed to be, at least in the U.S., for the people, by the people, of the people? And so if the people are not having a good time, the government should be fixing it, I think, is kind of the topic of the day.
Are we working for it, or is it working for us?
It's supposed to be working for us, but as we know, much of our voting doesn't actually directly contribute to what's going on in the government, and public opinion also doesn't directly contribute to what's going on in the government. Represent Us is a really awesome resource where you can see statistics such as it kind of doesn't matter whether the public is totally in favor of something or totally not in favor of something. The Senate and the Congress just vote however they want to vote, and public opinion doesn't influence what your elected representatives choose to do. Unfortunately, a lot of, well, not illegal because of Citizens United, but a lot of money that you don't know where it's coming from is influencing how your elected representatives vote, not your vote. I'm in favor of more direct democracy, and I think it's you're calling KVMF.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Wrong radio station. That'd be fun.
Old habits die hard.
KTUH.
Different radio station. KVMF doesn't want to talk to us.
So yeah, we're dialing Eomni on his show. What's the name of his show?
Know Thyself.
Know Thyself.
And I'll put a link in the comments to KTUH if you guys would like to follow a really fantastic radio station in Honolulu.
It's the best radio station in Honolulu.
Online from anywhere.
All right, that was just Tony Skakar with his version of Michael Jackson's They Don't Care About Us. Right now, I have the pleasure of being on the line with Gov't and Ainsley Sevier of Post-Orthodoxy. And so they are joining us from Butte, Montana. And as a reminder, the opinions and views heard here are not necessarily those of KTUH's licensees, management, nor staff, or anyone else. Dr. Ainsley, welcome once again to the show.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having us on the show there. Can you hear us all the way on the islands over there from the mainland?
I can hear you. You're a little bit muted, but I'm sure that, people understand.
Okay. Well, thanks for having us on the show, and aloha, folks.
So, well, once again, welcome. Our guest here heard just now from Chris Miller. He was discussing about some of the measures the government has been taking in the prevention of COVID-19 that has seriously affected the businesses here. And it led me to the question of what is the actual purpose of a government? Do we think that it's to protect the people? Is it to protect the businesses? Is it to merely perpetuate its own movement forward? And I know you guys did a little bit of research on this as well. So I'm curious, what do you guys think is the purpose of government as we move forward in this world?
Well, sir, I wanted to do a callback to your previous guest, Chris, his quote that I loved his quote so much. It is the role of the enlightened government to be open to other possibilities.
Right. That's an enlightened government.
Right, rather than just sticking with the guns forever and ever and we can't change our mind or else.
Right.
I looked at Google's version of a government. I Googled what is the role of government. And the first thing that comes up in Google is a government is an institution through which leaders exercise power to make and enforce laws. A government's basic functions are providing leadership, maintaining order, providing public services, providing national security, providing economic security, and providing economic assistance. That sounds like a good idea.
Uh-huh. But there's a lot of very vague terms in there.
Open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're providing assistance to who? Protecting which businesses, right? Things like that as we move forward. So I'm curious, having seen that definition and having experienced a lot of the politics over there in Montana, which I know are much different than the politics here in Hawaii, have you seen government fulfilling those supposed roles?
Well, in my experience, there seems to be some narratives that cross borders regarding, and I guess we're talking about what's going on with COVID-19. And I would like to say that I really appreciate that you are having this conversation on your show. We would normally be preparing for our radio show, except we have been censored and gagged from saying that we were censored about talking about this on our radio show, and we're terminated from our local community radio station for having conversations just like this. So I think what I'm noticing in Montana is that there is an unfortunate politicization of a medical issue that seems to be dealing with how you feel about the pandemic really has something to do with whether you identify as a Republican or Democrat, which I find troubling. I don't know if that's the way it's playing out over there for you guys.
It didn't at first. There were certainly maskers and anti-maskers on both sides, but since the commander-in-chief, however you want to feel about Trump, has made it an issue, it has become much more politicized here.
So you feel like the shutdown and unlock, the lockdown and unlock, do you think that divides pretty much along party lines where you are?
Not completely, and certainly Chris is right. There has been a lot of struggle here among small businesses. We're said to have lost 30% already. We're looking at between 60 to 90% being lost by the end of the year. Certainly something I know that you can identify with is the fact that a lot of the venues, especially since, things like singing have been banned, but even within the reopening plans that they just announced, bars, nightclubs, music venues are still insisted on being shut down for the next 3 months, regardless of anything else.
And that's your all summertime, right?
No, they got the same season.
Well, our summer, it's the beginning of fall for us like anyone else, but at the same time,
anywhere else in the northern hemisphere.
Year-round. This is why we say lucky we live in Hawaii, because, you can always jump in the ocean if you want. It's always a nice day to walk around most of the time.
Mm. Well, we just went through our summer season, and Hawaii and Montana are not that far apart in a lot of ways. Montana is only got 1 million people, just like Hawaii, but it's half the size of Alaska. And so we are already pretty socially distanced, but we also rely a lot on tourism. We rely a lot on people coming and visiting our state. And there are people who live here that are not, the resistance to outsiders has grown greater.
Yes.
The hospitality industry has become a little less hospitable for folks traveling through.
See, we're running into the opposite problem in that because our economy is so monolithic in the tourism industry that we really, we just have so many people waiting for the tourism to get back because that is what we are depending on to bring money into the state.
I feel like the role of government in something like this should be more flexible than it is. I'd have to agree with the enlightened government adjusts to new information. And I don't feel like there's a lot of adjustment going on to new information. You could know more. You could know more about the virus and what the actual risks are and how to protect the people most at risk instead of having a one-size-fits-all where people who are at extremely low risk of suffering the virus are being sequestered along with the people who are at risk, which to me is we should have spent more time, I think, in enlightened government when you figure out that this is similar to a flu in the effects that it gives people, that we would have done something around old folks' homes and making sure that we didn't lock younger people up with older people, because younger people have to get out in the world a little bit and they're more prone. So I feel like, yeah, an enlightened government would have been more responsive. And that's why I sort of am fixated on this idea that it's become, because we're in a political season in this country, because other countries are having other dialogues around the virus than we are.
And I completely agree with that. I do want to mention 2 points on that. First of all, yes, that's what an enlightened government should do. I have to say, in my time on this planet, I have not found an enlightened government in any of the places that I have lived. That having been said, I understand your concern of only limiting the people that are at risk. At the same time, certainly in a place like this, it may be hard to identify that, right? It's like right now we have children going back to schools in some of the private schools, even if not in the public schools, right? And we think, okay, by and large and for the most part, children are less susceptible to the disease. That having been said, we also live in a place here, and it may very well be different there, where a lot of children live in multi-generational homes.
Right.
With very elderly relatives or relatives that may have other health conditions that make them more at risk. And so, when you have, say, a family of Polynesians that are living 10 people in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, how do you specifically make sure that the children that are around them aren't being exposed, or that those children are playing with aren't being exposed, if the microbes are going to eventually make it back to the household?
To me, and am I supposed to call you DJE Omni?
You can call me whatever you want, Ainsley.
To me, Evno, this is just further makes the case for not a one-size-fits-all solution. I think we absolutely need to have more widespread education about the ways that the virus spreads and the ways that people can become ill and how to take care of people after they have contracted COVID-19, and less of just trying to bully people into doing the exact same thing everywhere in the country, no matter your racial background, no matter your financial background, no matter your household style, because I think we do need unique responses depending on the various houses and households that we're trying to help. And talking about children in multi-generational houses, it does become a little bit more complicated. You're right. And that's I forgot my second point, basically.
Well, I think one thing I'd like to add on to that is that just before the show, I was doing some research and came across a organization which I have not vetted or looked into yet, but it's called Docs for Open Debate. And they have an open letter from medical doctors and health professionals to all Belgian authorities and Belgian media. So I guess this is a Belgian organization, but they're connected with a bunch of different organizations. And they just want to have an open debate about what's going on. And if the role of the government is to serve the functions that we stated from the search that came up on Google, then I think we should be able to have a debate, figure out what we have learned, and how to adjust rather than waiting for an election to deal with a medical issue.
Speaking of elections, I remembered my second point. It is absolutely infuriating to me that I can go check my mail and have 5 to 10 full-color campaign and smear ads in my mailbox, and not a single piece of information has been mailed to U.S. citizens this year explaining how to know how to protect themselves from this virus.
Yeah, we could have sent out one of those cards.
And I think that is part of the politicalization that you're talking about. I do need to remind our listeners at this point that the opinions and views heard here are not necessarily those of the station, of the staff, or of any licensees. That having been said, I do want to bring up, I saw an article recently that originally the U.S. Post Office had planned on sending 5 masks to every address that they have, and that was stopped by the Trump administration. And when we talk about the politicalization of this pandemic, we also need to remember that you say governments need to act on the best information they have when you have the White House and the CDC giving completely different information on certain things. And, yes, information updates, but you seem to also have debates within the federal government as to what people should be doing, and local governments have no idea which set of information to act on. then those debates get resonated on the more local levels, so on and so forth.
So I think there's a point that you brought up with your last guest, is I think that there's the role of the government, which has failed. I think it's pretty clear that the state has failed in its function regarding protecting us from, with our economy and with our health issues and with education. There's been an abject failure across the board. And I feel like if we are going to, I think there's still this idea that government is like a big brother kind of thing, this larger than us entity, rather than being something that's supposed to represent us. Chris Hedges said something right after Trump's election that has stuck with me, where he talks about the importance of parallel institutions. And the idea is that these systems may be so calcified that they can't adjust and are not flexible enough to move us into the world that the corporations have already moved us into, our cultures have already moved us into, and the governments are a little behind the times. So I think there needs to be a more things like what I just read about, the docs for open debate, to say, you know what, we need to have a forum. We have the media, like I'm talking to you in Hawaii, and I have friends all over the country and the world watching us right now. We should be having this debate. There is information out there. You could know what the risks were. You could know whether the mask being sent out would have been a good idea or not. That's something that is something to be debated. And not just Facebook debated, but with people who have some expertise, some time in the field, these are frontline doctors, and they're saying we are being prevented from saving people's lives because of the politicization of this medical issue. Because, you know, when Donald Trump said something about hydroxychloroquine, suddenly you couldn't talk about that without being a Trump fan somehow. So I think we should be having debates outside of what the government is doing. And then force the government to do what the people have decided, which is the way it's supposed to work anyway.
It is, but it seems far from being there. Like, we already have, 80-some-odd% of the country really, really wants Medicare for all, especially in the midst of a pandemic. And that's, not something either party is willing to approach at this point. That having been said, I agree, there needs to be more spaces for these kinds of debates to happen in a non-politicized way. But we have also found, especially with the trauma and the fear that everybody's been going through around this, and not only around this, but this has certainly exacerbated, is that most people, even when exposed to people that have done the research and things like that, more and more people are unwilling to listen to viewpoints outside of their echo chamber and just repeating the same sound bites when exposed to new information.
I think
at least that's what I've experienced.
We definitely see an increase in that kind of behavior and reaction. I think a lot of it does come from trauma. I think a lot of people are really exhausted and don't know what the right answer is to keep themselves and their loved ones safe. And so thinking of encountering and absorbing new information in a time like this just seems like too much work, and we really wish there just was someone we could trust on a whole as citizens who we could trust, who would be telling us the right answers.
Yeah, it seems to be a problem.
And then who each party trusts, or who each group trusts. If those guys go at it at each other, then they're just relying on their base to support their view, and not really willing to take in other points of view, because admitting one's mistakes also is starting to be seen as signs of weakness rather than signs of maturity.
Yes, I wish I could just send everybody a postcard in the mail explaining to them what availability bias is and that you are more likely to think information is true if it's what you hear all the time. We recently took a road trip to buy a new car, and on the way home I was cruising channels, and most of the channels I encountered were very conservative channels. And after 3 hours of listening to conservative talking points, you begin to have an understanding of where these people are coming from and why people on various sides would be backing the politicians that they're backing and fighting for the principles that they're fighting. And we have to understand that every group does that, even the groups that we love and choose to be a part of.
Indeed.
Yeah,
So then the question becomes, is how do you find a platform, a way of getting across to the people that is not tinted by its own commercial and political aims? And is that even possible?
I think it's possible. I think we have this debate. People are so, I think we're really traumatized right now, and that's the problem. And what's going to be required is people who are not traumatized to actually get in front of the microphone. We can't face some of the simplest problems that we have right now. Like part of our political problem, when you have somebody like Joe Biden and who's running, who's not there's not a lot of overwhelming enthusiasm beyond he's better than Trump. And I think that demoralizes the voters from going out and actually getting involved because there's not an inspiring option. And it seems to me this is where the voters should be talking to the Biden campaign and saying, you could win if you supported the thing that most of the people wanted, which would be health care for all. If he would just do health care for all, then he would win the election. And we wouldn't be having this ongoing political trauma around Trump and how people are so afraid it's going to happen. Just pick the item that everybody wants. I don't understand why we're not.
I mean, we have
pushing
some theories.
The envelope on
we
that.
have some theories on why Biden isn't campaigning.
No, if you look into the history and his donors, one can understand the reasons why he chooses not to. Once again, the opinions and views heard here are not necessarily those of KTUH's licensees and management nor staff. But yeah, we get your point.
Follow the money.
There's a video I just posted on our Facebook page just now, and it's an interview from a Russian KGB agent who was in the United States in 1984, and he talks about how to brainwash a country. So it's a little 10-minute video that basically talks about how to demoralize a population and then destabilize a population, and then they just stop caring. And they just become very team-oriented and just need to know who the good guy is and support that because they've been so perceptually destabilized, they don't know where to turn. So you go with what's most available and the people that are closest to you, and you join in. And what he describes in this video in 1984 seems like something that has happened to this country since then, but seems to be like a microcosm has happened since the virus. We've stopped talking to each other beyond tropes, it seems. And if we're going to have a government that works for us and that functions for us, we have to be talking about how we get our information. We have to re-evaluate how we get our information. Because what this guy describes in 1984 is a very simple brainwashing technique. That if you look around the world, you can say, oh, if you're willing to admit that you've been brainwashed, then you can see the mechanisms of the indoctrination and the brainwashing all around you.
And that's a thing that we ought to want to admit or to accept, because then that gives us the power to take back our own cognitive liberty and our own mental sovereignty.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's more important than the virus.
I do want to let our listeners know that if you want to find this video and you want to find more of Dark and Ainsley and their productions, you can find them at Post-Orthodoxy on Facebook. That's POST-Orthodoxy. ORTHADOXY.
Yeah, Yeah, like Orthodox with a Y.
Yeah.
Right. So Post-Orthodoxy on Facebook if you want to find Dark and Ainsley, or Ainsley and Dark. And they are in the process of trying to get new equipment for their own podcast, so you can find more information on that on their website. But once again, we thank you for joining us. Unfortunately, we're out of the time we have right now. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with this morning?
Well, I appreciate you creating a platform where this conversation can be had. If you want to ask what needs to be done, this is what in my opinion, is what needs to be done.
More of this.
We need to be hearing each other and talking to each other, and fostering conversations that are outside of the memes that we see on Facebook, perhaps.
Indeed, and outside of the political echo chambers that most of the media seems to be involving in. Thank you guys once again. Once again, that is Dark and Ainsley Sevier. You can find them at Post-Orthodoxy on Facebook. As a reminder, the opinions and views heard here are not necessarily those of KTUH's licensees, management, nor staff. And we're going to go to one more song before the top of the hour.
Thanks,
Thank you
Edna.
for keeping it locked.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Bye.
This is Radio for the People,
Woo!
KTUH.
Oh, we interrupted his radio thing.
Oh, that's fine.
He was doing a spiel. I
He
was
said
like,
to say KTUH.
we have to say thanks at some point.
No,
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. Hi,
Yeah.
folks. That
Hi,
was that.
folks. So we're having a great time
Yeah,
over
it's
here.
three
We've got 10 people watching us on
Yeah.
Facebook. And I don't have to check any other numbers now because we're not wondering if anybody's hearing us on ButeAmericaRadio.org, since they kicked us out for having this exact kind of conversation that we just had with Evno on KTUH in Honolulu.
Right.
And you can listen to that at KTUH.org anywhere on the planet and hear local news, thoughts, and stories from local people, real humans like you, not a syndicated story that got vomited out into your local news resources. Somebody on Facebook was recently lamenting that there's a news article in the Montana Standard, which is the Butte newspaper, talking about the numbers of coronavirus cases in Montana that doesn't mention Butte. AKA, it was not written in Butte for Butte.
Yeah.
But stations like KTUH and KBMF are making news for your town in the town that you're in.
Some news.
Yeah, sometimes.
Not this kind of news.
Not this kind of news. At least not at KBMF.
Not at KBMF.
We really appreciate Evno. Evno has, he says it's all good that we weren't able to say things.
Oh, okay.
Or
good.
that we interrupted him, I'm not sure. He says
Okay.
it's fine. Evno has 3 philosophy degrees. I think that's so cool.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want
Dangerous
I wanna-
conversations.
We're going to be here for maybe another 10, 20 minutes, 30
Right.
minutes.
Dinah Olson McLeod just tuned in.
Oh, thanks for playing. I wanted to read this thing.
Yeah,
Can I read a thing?
Yeah, read a thing. This is
So
great.
just before the show, I found this thing called Docs for Open Debate. Which docs, I mean doctors, I guess.
Right, not docs like expose you for your crimes or docs like Google Documents.
Right. So this is from a Belgian group of Belgian doctors.
Okay, I'm gonna reshare that link now that we're on the
Okay,
go with our
yeah.
friends here on Facebook.
Right. And here is, so there's an open letter. I'll read the introduction to the open letter.
Yeah.
This is what Docs for Open Debate are. We, Belgian doctors and health professionals, would like to express our serious concern about the evolution of the situation in recent months surrounding the outbreak of SARS-CoV-2 virus. We call on politicians to be independently and critically informed in the decision-making process and in the compulsory implementation of corona measures. We ask for an open debate where all experts are represented without any form of censorship. After the initial panic surrounding COVID-19, the objective facts now show a completely different picture. There is no medical justification for any emergency policy anymore. The current crisis management has become totally disproportionate and causes more damage than it does any good. We call for an end to all measures and ask for an immediate restoration of our normal democratic governance and legal structures and all of our civil liberties.
So lest you be listening to
That's
that
Belgium.
and think, oh no, Republicans.
No.
That's Belgium.
They're talking about their country and their state.
You want to talk about it not being politicized. If you heard that and just thought, oh no, Republicans, you are politicizing it.
Right, so they have an open letter here, and you can find it. Anyway, Docs for Open Debate, it comes right up. And then they have basically all the points that they want to make about why they want to have this debate.
So these are doctors sharing science and their first-hand
Frontline
accounts.
experiences, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, look, at least in our country, this is something Evno was talking about with one of his previous guests on KTUH earlier, is the cost-benefit analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we should be doing one. There's been a lot of costs disproportionate to the amount of benefits.
Yes.
Of
we don't have
locking
those,
everything down.
We don't have those numbers yet, but they're not going to be pretty.
Right. Well, they may never do them because the people who are in charge of gathering those statistics have the ability to shape them however they want to.
Well, there's going to be numbers. I mean, know how many businesses have closed in your hometown.
Mark Hayden was commenting earlier that Honolulu is one of his most favorite places on earth, and they're projected to lose over 90% of all locally owned businesses by the end of the year.
Because they just need tourists to live.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a major tourism
monolith.
economy.
What do you say? It's a monolith economy. They have one thing that pays for that economy to keep going, and that's people visiting.
And the military.
Right.
Which doesn't anywhere. So the state of Hawaii at any moment can have 5 million people. Or the island of Oahu can have as many as 5 million people, but there's only 1 million people, 800,000 that live there.
8,000 people that live there?
800,000.
800. Okay.
So there's like 4 million people who don't live there that are there all the time. So it's like
Except
it would be like
not
having
now.
It'd be like having 5 million people in Montana instead of 1 million people.
Suddenly, right, because Montana has about 1 million people. Yeah, I mean, eventually people who are interested in these numbers will be able to go back and look at abuse rates and suicide rates and business closures and home foreclosures and chemical dependency rates. All of these things are on unfortunate upswings because of the lockdowns, which we would just stomach and say, okay, but we've got to do it if it really was like the zombie apocalypse. Like if it really was a zombie apocalypse or as deadly as SARS-1 was, then sure, we'll cross our fingers and hope that there will be support teams in place for all the chemical dependency and the abuse survivors and the financial disasters that people are going through right now. But the numbers that are shaking out are not saying that it's zombie apocalypse level, at which point we got to start looking at the scales and seeing, are we really alleviating suffering by keeping everybody at home all the time? Are we actually alleviating suffering or are we causing suffering? Does it balance out?
So now that we don't have the constraints of the commercial community radio station to edit some things, I want to say what we're doing right now with this show is to have a way to share information that we found and have concerned folks that are watching and listening and participating help us vet our sources.
We do have opinions.
Right.
And we also like to learn new opinions, and we want to hear where you're getting your data. If you think the data that you have doesn't match the data that we're finding.
Please help us. So like I shared Docs for an Open Debate. As far as I know, they might be a right-wing lesbian Nazi group. I don't know.
Right. Secret CIA plant talking like
I'm
they're
trying to figure out what
Belgians.
the interest, like what interest is there?
Who's paying those people?
Yeah, anyway, so if you find something about Docs for Open Debate, let me know, because I'd like to find out if they're like some reptilian, infiltration from another dimension or what.
As Chris was saying on Evno's show earlier, and maybe Evno was saying this too, we're not supposed to just have one source. Don't make us your source. Don't make CNN your source. Don't make just the CDC your source. Like, we have to do a little more work to find information and then find out if that information is reliable. It takes more work.
All right, here's a story that I really, even though I'm not on a radio station anymore, I have hesitation. I have a hesitation about framing this.
Okay.
Because I know we're in weird territory.
Yeah. And then I want to go back and I want to talk about the UN's Convention for the Rights of the Child briefly before we end today.
I just want to do a quick thing here because I feel like recently Florida had an interview with 3 Harvard and Stanford professors of medicine to figure out what Florida was going to do with the close downs, the lockdowns, the mask mandates, and all that. So in my news feed from my friends that are blue colored, blue no matter who, and also seem to have some trauma around the virus as well as Trump.
Right.
Their information feed is like, cases are going up in Florida and they're getting rid of all their mandates. Cases are going up.
And also Florida is saying, you know what? Forget about it.
They're saying we're not doing any more lockdowns.
This isn't
There's
worth
no more mask thing.
They're saying it's not worth it.
They're saying it's not worth it, and they have an interview. It's a 2-hour interview. I can link to that video as well. Actually, I won't link it to that. I just shared a link in our comments. There's a link to a thread on Twitter where a guy has broken down this 2-hour interview in 43 parts. So the highlights, these professors are advising this governor, and this is what Ebno is saying, is like, what's the job of governance? Well, the governance is supposed to deal with current information. So the governor says, what's the current information? And they say, you should stop doing all this stuff. So some of the points made in this video: runaway exponential growth hasn't happened anywhere.
Runaway exponential viral growth?
Viral growth.
Right.
With the possible exception of Iran, the epidemic has exhibited marked consistencies. The virus is behaving well, but people have been less consistent than the virus.
Right. Various countries have done various different things. Various states have done various different things. And yet the data is showing that the virus has behaved exactly the same way, no matter what measures each country did or didn't take.
Right. Here, I'm just going to read a couple of these, and then I'm going to go further. The purported reason for lockdown was to prevent overburdening of healthcare resources. Massive overprediction of demand happened nearly everywhere. Instead, the real problem was that hospital utilization fell so low that the sustainability of hospitals was jeopardized. Now, this is a national... So we had hotspots.
There were some places where hospitals were overwhelmed.
Right. But they were saying this is going to go crazy. It's going to get everybody.
I was really in favor of everybody just being really safe for a while in case we need lots of hospital beds.
Non-COVID deaths at home have skyrocketed. Elective procedures, cancer screenings, and doctor visits that don't happen have caused or will cause death and health impacts. It's likely excess deaths coincidental to the epidemic arose because treatment wasn't sought or provided. So this is something we've talked about a lot.
Heart attacks, suicides.
This guy goes further down. There's the video where you can see these Harvard medical professionals talking about what they've read in the data of the virus so far and why this governor has decided to let go the mandates.
And Fauci's story is we have no idea what this data is, what this virus is going to do. We don't know what its long-term effects are. And
So this is where it gets sticky for me.
Yeah.
Because this governor of Florida is a very red state. Governor, I imagine, is a super extremely red guy.
Yeah.
Republican guy.
Right.
So everybody's going to attack him on the left because he doesn't care.
Obviously, he cares more about tourism than your grandma.
And the thing that I said on the last show we were allowed to do on KBMF, is that what if the mask debate was on the Republican side?
As in, eventually we find out.
We find out that the masks didn't make a difference. What if, and that's a hypothetical.
That's a hypothetical.
So I said, hypothetically, what if the Republicans are right about masks not significantly stopping the spread, but they were right for the wrong reasons?
Right. They were just like, my freedom or whatever.
Right, my freedom.
Right.
They said, my freedom, so I don't want a mask.
Or most of my Christian friends who are like, we shouldn't be living our lives in fear.
Right,
Every time we get in a car, we're choosing that we might die, and therefore I'm going to not put masks on my children because if I do die, I'll go to heaven anyway.
So the tragedy, I think, is going to be that...
Prediction? Are you making a
prediction? Yeah, the prediction is we're going to find out that lockdowns and the masks this is what data is showing.
Right. We have almost a year's worth of data already.
Did not significantly slow the spread of the virus.
Right.
And thankfully, the virus it was easily spreadable, but not extremely deadly as they had feared.
Now, what I want to interject here is that based on my past 8 months of research into virology and masks, and based on the data that we're finding from doctors and scientists all over the place,
yeah,
some people should probably be wearing a mask every time they leave the house. That part is a good piece of medical advice if you have lupus or diabetes or an autoimmune disease such as like lupus, or you're asthmatic. Like if you are ill, you are more likely to catch other illnesses.
And you should be
should be protecting yourself, and we should be educating people who are ill how to protect themselves. And it's not a piece of fabric. I really do want my loved ones who have autoimmune diseases and pre-existing conditions to know how to protect themselves from viruses and bacteria in their environment. And so I absolutely do think that many people should be wearing a medically appropriate mask anytime they're socializing outside of their normal circles.
This ain't going to do it.
That's not going to save lives. It does keep spittle from leaving his mouth.
Yes.
But, like, so we're talking, should everybody wear a mask, a quote-unquote mask, and does everybody wearing a quote-unquote mask thing make that much of a difference for the few people who are actually at risk? Should we be traumatizing entire generations or helping them develop new lifelong kinks?
That's right. It's going to be a lot of mask porn in the future.
One of our fellow DJs mentioned a video that he was going to share on his radio show on KBMF that he has since decided not to share since we got kicked out for questioning what the government is saying.
Anybody could get kicked out
Anybody
now.
can get kicked out of KBMF now for questioning what the government is saying about masks. But he was going to share a video about how everybody having to wear something like this around their faces reminds you that you should be panicking.
Yes.
It reminds you that these are not normal times.
That's what health officials had said.
It reminds you that there's something wrong. And
so be aware.
Right. So if you do think that there is a massive zombie apocalypse level health event happening on the planet, then you absolutely should keep people in mind about it. What we found with the masks, unfortunately, is that the more people wear them, the less they social distance, and the less they're careful about how they touch their face and how often they wash their hands.
That's something that has been observed.
But this DJ has decided he's not going to talk about the constant state of mental trauma we're putting people through on KBMF, on his radio show, because he's afraid he'll get kicked off of his radio show too.
Right. So what if the Republicans are right about the not wanting to do the masks and not doing the shutdowns? It's going to be a real blow. And I think this is apocalyptic. This is apocalyptic.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Trump thing was apocalyptic for some people, and they were traumatized by Trump.
Mm-hmm.
The politicizing of the virus, in addition to Trump, and building to this election in a month or so, is compounded the trauma. I think this is where we need to be spending some time each week in the future of helping educate people on how to deal with trauma victims.
And how to soothe your own trauma.
Whew.
Yeah, because the country is maybe we got, like, if we want to be really reductive, we can say this country has like three groups. There is like the people that are really rabidly pro-Trump, and the people that are really, really traumatized by Trump. And then there's this massive group in the middle that's kind of tired of the whole thing.
Yes.
And we do have political opinions, but we're not.
And we could be doing better things.
And we could be doing better things, but we're not living in trauma, and we're also not, carrying torches in the middle of the night suspiciously. So, like, you've got these two small, very, very loud groups that have very strong feelings, and then everybody else in the middle. And I think it's going to fall to a lot of people in the exhausted majority who align reddish or align bluish to learn how to take care of their loved ones who are going to be very traumatized no matter what happens in this election, because there are going to be people who you think that if somebody is lashing out of their trauma, they must not be traumatized. but the very rabid Trump supporters are supporting him because of trauma, because of generational trauma of being mistreated in Midwestern states, because of generational trauma of not having any recourse for being abused as a child. And so they support QAnon, which is a movement to catch pedophiles.
Break it down.
So you've got people who are going to be really traumatized and lashing out of their trauma if Trump doesn't get reelected, and you've got people who are going to be really, really traumatized and self-harming in their trauma if Trump does get reelected. We're going to see an uptick in suicides. We're going to see an uptick in substance abuse, unfortunately. Yeah. And the more that we can all learn to take care of ourselves, take care of our traumas, and learn to recognize a trauma response. Lashing out is a trauma response, and so is lashing in. Don't just only take care of the people who are hurting themselves or beating themselves up. Because people, if Trump doesn't win, and all the people that are going to start lashing out, they're not doing bad things for no reason. Christianity taught us that people do bad things for no reason, but people don't do bad things for no reason. They don't just wake up in the morning and think, how can I screw over someone else? People do bad things out of a place of trauma. And it might be generational trauma, and it might be deep-seated trauma, or it might be even trauma that they technically shouldn't have because they're just like reverse racism or whatever. But people do bad things out of trauma, and when you see folks lashing out or self-harming or retreating around election period, it's out of trauma, and we can learn to take care of each other throughout those things.
Yeah.
That was, whew.
I like that.
Whew. I just want to take care of people. Damn it.
Speaking of broad, sweeping terms like Christians.
Right. I didn't say Christians, I said Christianity.
Okay, good, yeah. Christianity.
Modern Christianity.
It was a safe, you didn't have to qualify too much because of the context and so on and so forth. I think it's a good segue to what you wanted to talk about today about if we're going to support this idea of like, yeah, maybe we should make ending child trafficking or human trafficking, we should make that a priority and maybe do our best to crush that a little bit.
Yeah.
But maybe in addition to that, we could do what the UN has suggested. Do you want to talk about that?
So if you want to kind of have like little barometers for yourself, so I have little barometers for myself where I understand I might have availability bias and confirmation bias at this point after 8 months of studying SARS-CoV-2 data. I might automatically think certain data must be right because it matches what I already know. And so I'm always careful to take in any conflicting data or information people share with me because I want to keep checking myself. I want to barometer myself. And I think if you want to barometer yourself, you can just go to the grocery store and see if you think that people who are wearing masks are probably Democrat and people who are not wearing masks are probably Republican. Because if that enters your mind at all, you're not actually, you're politicizing what shouldn't be a political issue. And you're going to have confirmation bias about anything that comes out of the masked person's mouth and anything that comes out of the not masked person's mouth. And that's a way that you can barometrize yourself, right? So another big thing going on right now, on top of coronavirus and on top of the Black Lives Matter movement, is the hashtag Save the Children, which is a campaign to ostensibly end child sex trafficking and human trafficking in general. I remember having a library bag when I was a kid from the Save the Children organization, but my mother had Sharpied on it, Save the Children, teach them about Jesus. So back in her day, you didn't actually do any campaigns politically or socially. You just, in your circles, one-on-one, taught people how to get to heaven, and that's how you would save the children.
Okay.
And so now we have massive religious groups, the evangelicals. 1 in 4 of every U.S. citizen identifies as an evangelical Christian. Over 70% of U.S. citizens still identify as Christians of some kind, and there are many other conservative religious groups in the U.S. that have similar belief systems. So now we have Christian religious groups and many other kinds of people, especially people who were abused as a child, getting behind the Save the Children movement and acting socially and politically in ways where Christians used to just act spiritually, one-on-one, within the church, within the community, that sort of thing. So if another barometer for yourself would be if you hear hashtag Save the Children or see something that says hashtag Save the Children, do you immediately think, yes, we should end child sex trafficking, or do you think, grr, Republicans?
I think QAnon.
Yeah.
As soon as I see Save the Children, I just think of QAnon.
Even though Save the Children has been around for decades.
Right.
It's been an ongoing conversation trying to end child sex trafficking and human trafficking in general. The first thing that I see anytime one of my friends shares a Save the Children thing is I immediately think about the kids with no diapers sleeping on concrete floors in literal dog cages in Texas. That's what I think about when I hear somebody talking about Save the Children. I just want to bitch slap them with, what about these children?
Yeah.
Not these children? Only some of the children? I get really, I'm trying to keep it down, trying to keep it low. So, don't talk to me about the children. So, or do, but be prepared. Be prepared! So the UN, I'm going to share this article right now. It's a Washington Post article. Why won't the U.S. ratify the UN's Child Rights Treaty? And this article is going to get into all of the history behind it. But 25 years ago, or like almost 30 years ago now, 190 countries who are members of the United Nations passed the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The U.S. didn't sign it until, who was it? I think Bill Clinton signed it, or the administration under Bill Clinton signed it, right? But we haven't ratified it, which means we haven't agreed in votes in our country to start doing those things. We agreed, yes, this is a thing.
Good idea.
But the U.S., Somalia, and South Sudan
are the only three
countries who are members of the UN who have not enacted the rights of the child in their country. And
why do you think that is?
It really pisses me off. But to speak broadly of hashtag not all Christians, a large segment of the belief system of Christianity is parental rights. People get angry about non-gender bathrooms in schools because of parental rights. Because if the school is pushing the gay agenda to let a child choose to be called Jackson instead of Janice.
Or tolerance.
Or, tolerance.
Yeah.
They're overriding parental rights to teach their children what they want their children to know and think.
Right.
And so the U.S., this article just goes into really great detail. It's very well written. My chair keeps going down, down, down. The U.S. Has not enacted the rights of the child. And so we, for instance, have the worst paid parental leave policies around pregnancy and childbirth of almost any country.
Rights. So I was raised with no rights. So I was raised in a very extreme Christianity, a right-wing Christianity, where your property, and the wife and the kids are the property of the husband. Right.
It goes God, church, husband, wife, children.
Right. So it's property, and I was raised not as, look at this thing that's popped out, let's see what it does.
Well, they don't say your property.
We're going to make it into a thing.
Right.
Chattel is a real thing.
Well, but they don't say that in most Christian circles in the U.S. They didn't call you property.
Kinda.
They called you property?
Chattel? Isn't that the same thing?
Did they call you chattel?
It's in the Bible somewhere. It's the Old Testament. We're Old Testament, yo.
Right, sorry. Well,
eye for an eye, come on.
Like a lot of Christian groups, the property is implied in that you are a reflection of your parents. You are your parents' legacy.
Yeah.
We're talking about generational blessings and curses here. So there's a lot of language around how the child, well, who said it? R.C. Sproul or something like that? Like, it is far better that your child die than that your child grow up to sin against you. Like, this is a modern Christian leader in the U.S. It's far better that your child die than that he grow up and sin against you.
Right.
And I know that a big part of the reason that my parents don't talk to me is because they're ashamed. They're ashamed that I am not being an appropriate bullied child. I'm not being a good bullied child.
You're an experiment and it didn't work out.
Yeah, it was an accidental experiment. Sam wants to know, is there any correlation between those non-signing countries in relation to the trafficking numbers and data? Like, are they all being trafficked from South Sudan to the U.S.?
Well, that's why I think...
I wonder.
Like, I can imagine why someone like my dad would not support that because it would go against his religion, and I think there's a lot of folks in this country...
Parental rights.
which gives us a perspective on what our religion is like. If we're one of 3 countries that decided kids can't really have legal rights.
They don't have it's the parents who have the children.
Yeah.
They have the children. My children.
Right.
My children.
Yeah.
Not, I happen to be a vehicle for this being to come onto the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because I have chosen to be a vehicle for this being to come onto the planet, I have also chosen to give up at least 20 years of my life helping this being figure out what the heck they're doing here.
Mm.
I want to see more parents talk like that. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to give up 20 years of your life to help another being figure out what the heck they're supposed to be doing on this planet, don't become a parent.
Mm-hmm.
That's what parenting is.
Well, my parents didn't think they were shaping me. They
Right.
weren't fostering me.
Right.
They were trying to
Make you into the right person.
robotize me into the thing that they
Mhm.
wanted me to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another big talking point.
That's no rights. There's no rights
no.
in that
There's
story.
there's no you.
No.
There's either the sinful nature of you that popped out that we
Right.
have to train up a child in the way that he should grow so
Beat
that when he is old he won't forget it.
Beat them.
Right.
Right.
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
Right.
It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
So there's either the version of you that is the bad version that unfortunately you just poop out as the bad version because Eve ate the apple.
Right.
And then it's your parents' job to train you how to resist your vices,
Fight evil
Fight the
nature. Evil
be
nature.
the best version of yourself that you're supposed to be.
No one ever screwed.
Yeah, or you're just blank. Like that's kind of the
Right.
best case scenario these days.
Fill you up with
Children
all
are
the
born
propaganda.
blank,
Yeah.
and so it's on the parent. That's where a lot of the modern homeschool movement came about in the 80s and 90s. Was that wait a second, these are my children, and I have a God-given duty. I will stand before God someday, and He'll be like, "Why did you mess up your children so badly? So why should I be having a stranger indoctrinate them all day?
Right. It's too risky.
That's not responsible.
Right.
So I should keep them at home, and I should teach them all the things that I think are the right things for them to know, because that's my job." Anyway. Oh, we have 11 people watching right now.
We might have to leave soon.
We have to leave soon. We have other things that we're doing. This is just a little interlude show. We're really grateful to EVNO and KTUH for keeping us doing shows, because we would just dive into all the web design and
Right. We have our fundraiser page up right now, the GoFundMe page.
And we're really grateful because we've already raised almost a fifth of what we need in like less than 24 hours.
That's nice.
We made a large goal because we're building a website, or well, a different person is building the website for us.
We're paying somebody to build our website.
We're paying somebody to build our website for us. We need a podcast studio that we can have here, so we can have
don't yell.
people come visit us. It'll sound nice. It'll look nice. It'll be archival quality podcasts, and we need a mobile studio, which is like my phone, but with a tiny microphone and a tiny, little extra things. So plus it takes some money. For instance, right now we're paying $19 a month to be able to stream to you on our Facebook page, as opposed to my personal timeline. We could pay an additional $27 a month to never have a live stream broadcast breakdown, which is going to be an eventual cost, depending on which services we choose. We want to have reliable internet so that we're not having a great conversation and then the whole thing breaks down and you guys disappear. And I also am going to post a link for those of you who are of the appropriate age to the helpful folks that loaned us their production studio to make the campaign video that you can see on our GoFundMe.
I can recommend the video.
We can recommend things.
I can recommend the video.
I can just sort of unlearn all of my sideways language. If y'all are interested in ethical, consensual, imaginative, nurturing, LGBTQ plus positive porn.
Oh, is that what it is?
I recommend Lush and Stoner.
They loaned us some gear to make our video, and if you go
Which kind of is spoilery for the video, but you should go watch the video anyway.
And if you go to the GoFundMe page, at the bottom there is a link to their Instagram or something.
They have it's still called a link tree, where
link
you can
tree,
find all the links you might desire.
Wow, there's a lot of desire in those links.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. You've given us a lot to talk about. I appreciate Sam Brian Von Ossen, Andrea was talking about we were kind of having this sideways conversation about the Great Reset and world leaders and how money isn't the only form of capital.
I want to get back to the Great Reset again.
So many topics. We're going to start doing some more little pop-up shows, especially this week while we're promoting our GoFundMe. If you know friends who are willing to drop $25 so that we can buy a microphone and don't have to yell.
Yeah, we're trying not to yell. We're trying to keep calm, cool, collected tones. Because that's what people need these days. I think we have enough yelling.
There's so much porn. There's so much outrage porn.
Outrage porn.
Yeah.
I think we can have a microphone where we can use modulated, soothing tones.
So that we're not turning people off by having to yell so that you can hear us.
Part of it is just technology, and you can help us out if you go to our GoFundMe page.
And all of this is happening on my phone right now.
Yes.
So, thanks, LG.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for supporting independent media. This is
independent media. You could call us edutainment. You could call us meta news. You could call it interactive journalism if you like.
And if there's anybody who has resources on topics that we discussed, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments.
Or send it to us on Post-Orthodoxy.
So we can get turned on to it. And if you have some information on the links that we have shared and want to say, hey, that's actually a Nazi child trafficking front.
Right, maybe don't share that link.
Right. We're trying to help each other. So thanks for playing today.
We appreciate you guys.
We'll be back maybe next Sunday.
Well, before even next Sunday, we're gonna talk about some things.
We might take it outside.
Oh, we don't have the equipment for that yet. It's too windy.
See our